It's now going to be my pleasure to introduce our keynote speakers, Sherrie Moore and Elizabeth Sault. And I want to tell you, these two are really worth waiting for. I've had the opportunity to come to know these two exciting, vibrant young professionals today, and I know you're going to enjoy the message that they have for you. Sherrie Moore uses her background in social work and lived experience from her 17-year career in child welfare to weave insight and story together to deliver a tale of learning and unlearning with many ups and downs. Her extensive leadership experience with the Toronto Children's Aid Society and Family and Children's Services Niagara demonstrates that she doesn't just speak about shifting practice, she has lived it. Sherrie's studies in social welfare policy, holistic healing, and trauma-informed leadership provide a unique lens to view the work she and her team do with families. Sherrie is honored to have worked closely with Indigenous leaders in Niagara in the creation of the Unity Team. She is currently a service director for service to Indigenous children, youth, and families at Family and Children's Services Niagara. Elizabeth Sault is a loving mom to 3 children, Sterling, Victoria, and Colton. She is a second-generation Indian residential school survivor and proud member of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation Golden Eagle Clan. Over the last 20 years, Liz has advocated for and made a positive difference by implementing Indigenous ways of seeing, being, knowing, and doing for her community. Her professional background includes various capacities of advocacy and support on behalf of families and individuals affected by intergenerational trauma, resulting in interactions with child welfare, domestic violence, human sex trafficking, and the justice system. The work in these sectors requires Liz to continually invoke encouragement of community wellness and to provide individuals with compassionate services that aim to build them to their highest potential. Liz accomplishes this by being an exemplary role model and support for Indigenous community members. During their keynote address, Sherrie and Liz will talk about the work being done by the Unity Team at Family and Children's Services Niagara and their collaboration with Indigenous partners. They will discuss the ways in which the Unity Team collaboration is a meaningful step toward reconciliation, working to build bridges of trust with Indigenous communities and centering on Indigenous self-determination. Sherrie and Liz will share the Unity Team's journey, which is one filled with wisdom, courage, honesty, respect, truth, humility, and love. And given the importance that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission gave to child welfare, I think it's important that we have an opportunity to hear the message that these two professionals bring. As a reminder, members can participate in question period following the keynote address by entering their questions into the chat box on the right page. Please join me in welcoming 2 remarkable professionals, Sherrie Moore and Elizabeth Sault.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanting to take a moment to thank Nathan for helping us open in a good way this morning. I'm also wanting to thank the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers for inviting us today, as well as everyone who is joining this year's Education Forum. I acknowledge and thank the generations of Indigenous people who've cared for all the lands and celebrate the continued strength and spirit of Indigenous people. Our presentation today is called Unity, Disrupting Racism and Decolonizing Child Welfare in Niagara.
Ani Bonjour, I'm Elizabeth Sault. I really don't need to do an introduction because you already did a fantastic introduction of who I am and who I perceive myself to be. I'm really excited to be here today. This is my traditional territory here in Toronto. As John mentioned, I'm part of the Mississauga Nation, and I'm really thankful. I welcome you to this circle today, and I like to think about any gathering that we have as a circle, because we are all equals here. And as we sit in circle today, I want you to know that I come here with great humility, and I'm always ready to learn, but also to unlearn some of the things that have come my way over my many years of practice. Miigwech.
My name is Sherrie Moore. I grew up in the small town of Welland, Ontario. I live about 10 minutes from there now, with my husband and my giant Newfoundland dog, Gus. On this slide, you'll see a picture of my maternal grandfather, who came to live with my mom, my dad, my sister, and I when I was very little. He told my sister and I of our Indigenous heritage, something that we knew little about at the time and still know very little about his story now. On the other side of the slide, you'll see a picture of my father when he was just a little guy. My father was adopted through Family and Children's Services when he was about 8 months of age. We know nothing at all about his family of origin. These two men formed a great bond when they lived together, and it appeared to support and protect each other when I was little. They both shared their experiences of being disconnected from their identities, which seemed to be the reason that they supported and protected each other. These are qualities I believe they passed to me. Their disconnection and mine led to a personal and professional journey that will last a lifetime. I will forever be on my own path of healing, decolonizing, and reflecting. I'm grateful for Liz and the Indigenous community in Niagara, as their knowledge has helped me as well as many others who are on a similar path. I'm not an expert of anything. I'm hoping our story will provide a nugget that maybe you can take along your path, or that feedback, or you could provide feedback so it could help us on ours. Sorry, just having a little trouble with the slideshow here. Okay, the notes aren't coming.
Oh, our notes are gone.
Okay, we're having a little technical issue, but we're just gonna keep on pushing through. So just wanting to take a moment to also kind of acknowledge the fact that Liz and I are here today together, but there are other members of the Unity team who aren't here with us today. And this is in this photo, you'll see many of the Unity team members. And this photo was taken during April 2022 at the Niagara Regional Native Center, when the Unity team met with the ministry to advocate for ongoing funding of the team. We wish that the entire team could be here today, but we're hoping to take a few minutes to watch a video that will help include their voices in today's education forum. We've been constantly working on our relationship with our Indigenous partners, and started to realize that maybe we could all do things a little bit differently through coming together.
The Unity team is important because the child welfare system has an over-representation of Indigenous children in care. While Indigenous children make up 7% of the Canadian population, they make up over 52% of children in care. And that's a really, really significant and negative number.
Until we can stop saying there are Indigenous children in care, we've got work to do.
Children need to know their roots. They need to know their culture. They need to feel comfortable with themselves and where they came from. They need to Indigenous children in particular need to know the land.
I think from the beginning, we just try to adhere closely to the phrase, nothing about us without us. So from the beginning, we try to have the band reps and the local advocates involved in all of our internal conversation.
When we gather, much of the time we'll gather in circle. And when we're in circle, everyone is equal. And that's what is really important, as well as utilizing our Indigenous cultures. So regardless of that culture, if somebody is from a Mohawk community, Cayuga, Anishinaabe, the Unity team respects and tries their very best to include an elder or somebody that is able to bring that culture to the circle to make sure that people feel safe and heard.
When we listen to those voices, then we can create wraparound plans involving the community, involving the family, extended family and friends in a better way.
Our advocates have conversations along with our child and care workers together with parents to say, what does your culture mean to you and your family? And how can we ensure that that's supported?
We really needed to create a team that was built on trust, and trust happens through relationship.
The way I'm seeing that trust has been built or is being built is when a family is reaching out to me to ask me questions, but they're just able to open up and share some information that, because they could trust the worker or they're trusting me in that instance, it builds hope to know that the future could look better for them.
I think I've definitely noticed that our relationships with families, and especially parents and caregivers, is a lot different.
When we go into the home, we're presented as a team, and they know that it's a team and that we're different. And they're seeing that the difference is, because it's not everybody's afraid of facts, but now they're starting to see, oh, well, this is different. And if their worker's not available, then they call me. And if I'm not available, and they're like, oh, I called the worker, and I was like, okay. And they go, yeah, this is way different. They're not as afraid to get the help now as they used to be. And that threat is taken away about they're coming in to take my children.
I've seen so many positive outcomes with the families that I work with. It feels different, and it is different because I feel like I know them so much more than I did before. You know, when we work with them, we work with grandparents, aunts, uncles, like family friends. And so you get a whole nother perspective of a family. And to me, that's a beautiful outcome.
The ability to be honest with each other, to be heard, right? To be able to bring Indigenous voices to the table with the child welfare system, that's huge. Right? And to be received with understanding and respect.
With some of my families that the children have been reunited their home, the families still stay connected with us. And I receive videos of one child, she's reading. And I was just like, oh my God, she sent me this video, she's now reading. And I was with her when mom was pregnant with her. And now she's 5. They still stay connected. And I got to watch him walk for the first time.
It's really about continuing this path and then looking for opportunities to continue to grow and understand trauma-informed practices and really provide service to families where we wouldn't even consider an Indigenous child coming into care.
I believe that family first is something that we should prioritize. And having kids return home is important to me.
For the first time in the last 25 years, we really feel heard. This team is so important to me. October 1st, 2022, so this year, unlike any other day, I had the opportunity to be in service to the community. We had our first powwow in years, which if you know powwow, you know how important that is to our community and to bringing us all together. It was an amazing day with our dancers and drummers and all of the good energy that we bring to our community in Niagara. And I mean, there were people from all over the United States, from Northern Ontario, an absolutely amazing day. So that day, unfortunately, they stuck me at a door as maybe a security or something. I'm not really sure, but I was there to greet our community members as they came in. And in came one of my absolutely favorite families. I've been engaged with this family for just over 5 years. And they have had some interactions with Fax Niagara, with child welfare. And I've walked with them through this journey. I'm happy to say they are doing absolutely amazing at this time. And I'm so proud of the accomplishments of this mom. I just really want to touch on a conversation that I had. So as I walked mom with her stroller and her little ones to the elevator, a little 5-year-old boy, he said to me, "I learned about residential schools at school." So which would have been the day before, I believe. Was it the day before? And I said, "You did? Wow, that's amazing. I'm really happy that they're teaching that." But what he had to say really hit hard for me. And I mean, he's a little guy with a little voice, but what he had to say was so impactful. And I really believe that this is something that we need to be mindful of in practice. He said, "My teacher told us about all of the kids that were taken." And then he continued on to say, "The bad lady came and took me too, and I did not get to go home." I just want to sit with that for a moment. That is so impactful, but also just being mindful of our history. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? Because for me, that made me feel like we need to do more. We need to do more. And that is why I am part of the Unity team, because I really, truly want to make a difference with our communities alongside of our friends here. So.
Just going to go back there for a minute and say that we have to ask ourselves how we got here. And I think it's important that we all understand that the residential school system was a form of genocide and was a purposeful attempt by the government and church to eradicate all aspects of Indigenous culture. Children were removed from their communities and families, leaving communities childless, and children were placed in schools where they were punished for speaking their language or for practicing their traditions. Many children died in these schools, and the emotional, sexual, physical abuse was all common. At the same time, white children were being protected from abuse, and it was considered a crime. The child welfare system swooped in the 50s and 60s and removed Indigenous children at high rates, which is why the child welfare system is often referred to as the successor. I would like to say things are different now, but Indigenous children are admitted to care 2.5 times higher than other children. The reasons are complex, but are directly connected to colonization, systemic and individual racism, and intergenerational trauma caused by the residential school system, as well as child welfare. Indigenous families have a higher likelihood of coming into contact with child welfare as there is lack of access to critical services, they experience poverty, unemployment, and housing instability. We need to recognize that this is not an individual problem, but rather a societal problem that we all need to address.
Just to continue with my story, it was mentioned that I'm a second-generation Indian residential school survivor. My father attended the Mohawk Institute, some of you might know as the Mush Hole. Unfortunately, with that colonization piece, we had a disconnect from our culture. We didn't know culture growing up. It took the Friendship Center for me to really begin to learn who I was as an Anishinaabe Kwe. And I feel responsibility to this community because I have been gifted with so much knowledge, with so much love that is my responsibility to give to these families. So like that little boy and his mom and siblings, I want to walk beside them, all of the families that we interact with, and to give them that chance to grow and to be part of the community in a way that is organic and natural and doesn't feel pressured, because that's the way it should be. Everything that we do should be done with love. I want to talk a little bit about the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. The TRC spent 6 years traveling across Canada to hear from Indigenous people taken from their families as children and placed in residential schools. The 6-volume report contains 94 calls to action, and the first 5 of which are directed at child welfare. So I want to talk about that. So I want to just kind of recap the 5 calls to action. And I'm not sure how many of you have read it, but if you haven't, I encourage you to do so. I think when we talk about racism and making change, allyship is not enough. Saying that you're an ally means that you are actually engaging in and doing the work. So here we call upon the federal, provincial, territorial, and Aboriginal governments to commit to reducing the number of Aboriginal children in care. We call upon the federal government, in collaboration with the provinces, territories, to prepare and publish annual reports on the number of Aboriginal children, First Nation, Inuit, and Métis who are in care compared to non-Aboriginal children, as well as reasons for apprehension, the total spending on preventative and care services by child welfare agencies, and the effectiveness of various interventions. We call upon all levels of government to fully implement Jordan's Principle. We call upon the federal government to enact Aboriginal child welfare legislation that establishes national standards for Aboriginal child apprehension and custody cases. We call upon the federal, provincial, territorial, and Aboriginal governments to develop culturally appropriate parenting programs for Aboriginal families. This quote here from Justice Marie St. Clair, sorry. The road we travel is equal in importance to the destination we seek. There are no shortcuts when it comes to truth and reconciliation. We are all forced to go the distance. These calls to action need to be put into action.
In 2017, the OCSWSSW apologized for the harmful role child welfare has played historically and continues to play in the lives of Ontario Indigenous children, families, and communities. And as a sector, unanimously agreed to 9 reconciliation commitments. So I just want to review that as well. So the commitments are to reduce the number of Indigenous children in care, to reduce the number of legal files involving Indigenous children and families, to increase the use of formal customary care agreements, to ensure Indigenous representation and involvement at the local board of directors, implement mandatory Indigenous training for staff, change the interagency protocol to include Jordan's Principle as a fundamental principle, in consultation with Indigenous communities, develop a unique agency-based plan to better address the needs of children and families from those communities, to continue to develop relationships between local Indigenous agencies and local agencies and Indigenous communities, and to assist those individuals wanting to see their historical file by accessing and providing the information that they request.
Across Ontario, you will find many Indigenous resources. If you find yourself not being able to access these resources, I encourage you to reach out to myself or Sherrie. We are happy to help you along your journey. But I want to take a moment for you right now, if we can just take a moment to reflect. What I would like you to reflect on is the story of the family that I shared, but also take a moment to write down a commitment that you're willing to make to Indigenous families and how we can work together to create systemic change. So if you could write it in the chat, just take that moment, write it in the chat, and really, truly tell us today, what are your commitments? I now want to talk about our path to unity. And this was a really unique thing. So one day I was sitting in my office and our executive director had come to me and said, I put your name forward to work with Fax Niagara. At that time, it wasn't called the Unity Team. It actually didn't have a name. So we worked really hard on the Unity Team, and that all comes with a really fun story as well. But looking back, she came to me and she said, you know, I would really like you to consider working on this project. And I have to be honest, I have had many interactions with child welfare that made me say, absolutely not. No way is this going to happen. Because it seemed very unrealistic, this partnership with our Indigenous community and child welfare. And I know there's probably some of you that are here today that are feeling the same way. And I want you to know that this 1-year journey has been very successful. We have managed to impact so many families. But with that, I decided, yes, I need to be part of this team because I need to have a voice. I need to be heard. My families need to be heard, and they do that through me. So we began this journey together. We came into Circle, and the discussion started. Some of the discussions were, rather abrupt, right? How do you propose that we're going to do this? How are we going to work together? Because, and then we talk about all of these challenges that we've faced along the way in trying to be heard, or just simple things like, you know, having a family lose their children to child welfare, but not being heard. So as the service providers that work with these families, we were not being heard, and now we are.
I just wanted to take a moment to mention that the Niagara region does not have an Indigenous child wellbeing agency. And initially that those committed to the creation of the Unity team came together, as Liz said, in Circle. The focus on in our early days was really just to build a connection and a relationship. We wanted to figure out what practices did we need to learn and what did we need to unlearn. We wanted to figure out what would divide us and what would bring us together. We came to understand that the work we did together would impact the next 7 generations. We were not alone, as our ancestors were there to guide us, and the community was there to support us.
So I want to talk about our goals and how they were developed. As you can see here on this slide, the goals that we had come to agree on were to reduce the number of children in care, reduce court involvement with Indigenous families, and thus reducing crisis and trauma. We agreed to collaborate with one another. So that included our families, our advocates, expand representation in the planning through Indigenous-led approaches as healing circles, Indigenous alternative dispute resolutions. So some of you would know those as AADRs. I know the terminology has changed a little bit. There's IADRs, ADRs, but nonetheless, it's a collaboration that we've all agreed on. And also to connect our children with services and supports. And I can't say enough about what is happening in our communities. We gather Monday nights and have a rather large drum circle. And some of the families that attend are there specifically to see their children. And the connection to the culture it's unexplainable, I have to be honest. So that's really, things are very much coming together, and to have the ability to have these conversations when you see risk, but allowing the opportunity to have a family engage in these cultural events in a safe space really is so meaningful. So I want to share a little bit about how the goals were developed. So when the Unity team was created, there were 3 main goals that we just spoke of. So listening and lifting Indigenous voices, a commitment to reducing the number of Indigenous children in care, which means operating as if there were no foster care system. Looking at what you might do instead while remaining focused. So instead of bringing a child into care, what can we do to safely ensure that a family stays together? So increasing that well-being of the children. Operating from a view that best interest of the children is remained connected with their family and their community who can support the child in connecting to their culture and language.
We learned that collaboration is essential in this process. If members on the team didn't agree, we would meet immediately and work through things. And so oftentimes, if there was a disagreement between advocates that were connected to the team and the child welfare worker, we would get into a room together and have a really fulsome discussion about it. So instead of becoming defensive, we leaned into those uncomfortable conversations, which I think helped us build relationships, but also helped us grow and figure out new creative ways that we could help families. It was all about connecting families to their communities. What we learned is that although a family may not be involved with the Unity team long, and that was a good outcome, they could stay connected to their community long after their file with the agency closed, because those connections could be lifelong. And that was something that was really important to us. We also all learned that we're all on our own personal journey to understand equity and to understand what our journey meant for us as a community. And so we were all encouraged to attend training or to, kind of involve ourselves in self-directive learning to continue to learn and grow as individuals as well as a team.
And I think one of the things, Sherrie, also is around that piece of disagreeing, because there are many times that we do disagree, or that our Unity team generic workers are able to come to me and say, Liz, what would you do in this situation? And we can have a real conversation. And it's so important that we have created these relationships where, we can really work things through with conversation. Really, that's all it is. We're a bunch of people that are looking to make a difference in the community through conversation and doing.
So this provides a bit of an overview of what the Unity team's all about. And you'll see there's obviously a child in the center, because that's the center of everything that we're doing is that child, and their safety and well-being is our focus. But you'll see surrounding that child lots of different options, and I think that's something that we came to learn, that there wasn't only one solution, which would at times, I think, in the past lead to children coming into care, but there were so many things we could do. So there were intervention opportunities. There were community links that we could link a family to community service where child welfare really didn't need to be involved at all. There were early interventions that we could do that would help a family, only have a short period of time with our team. There were admission prevention things that we would do, and we found that there were many of things that we could do to prevent those admissions. We focused on reunification. When the team was first assembled, a lot of the files that came over, a lot of the families that came over to our team were families where children were in care already. And so it was, our job as a team to look at those situations and figure out if there were plans that had or missed opportunities to reunify those children to their families. And many of the children during that phase of the Unity team were reunified. And that happened through a lot of circle work and a lot of coming together. And, I think really the parents feeling comfortable enough to engage in that process. And so that's something that the Unity team's been very focused on. Kinship is also an area where we really looked at, are there opportunities for children to remain in their community, even if being with their parent isn't a safe option at that time. And also that's where we would look at and explore customary care if that was an option. We were always trying to look at how do we interact with families in a trauma-informed way and provide crisis support rather than creating the crisis. So looking at how we could do that. You'll see to the left of the diagram that our focus was always on the well-being and safety of the child. That's the center of what we're doing. We support Indigenous self-determination and the creation of circles of supportive people that would surround that family and that child so that the child welfare system wouldn't have to. We would shift to Indigenous prevention supports rather than mainstream supports to ensure that there was that connection to community that could last after the Unity team was involved. And we'd seek to establish connections that will continue to support the family, as I said, when our service ends, so that there was a less likelihood that the family would become re-involved with child welfare service. So I'll continue on and just tell you, we often are asked who's on the Unity team and what's our complement or what does that look like? And so on the Unity team, we have 5 Indigenous advocates, and those 5 Indigenous advocates do not work for Family and Children's Services. So they do work for local friendship centers or Indigenous local. So the 3 centers that we are in collaboration with is the Niagara chapter of Native Women, the Niagara Regional Native Center, and the Fort Erie Friendship Center. And so that's where the advocates come from that work alongside our team. We also have 2 children's service workers. As I said, when the files or the families first came to our team, there were many children that were in care that we were looking to reunify. So we wanted to ensure the children's service workers that were involved were part of our team, part of our decolonizing, kind of thinking through things and unpacking things and on that reflective journey with us. We have 6 child welfare workers, and the reason it's important we state that they're generic is what that means is the worker that's assigned to the family on the Unity team will remain involved with that family from the beginning, from when we first have contact with that family, right on through until the file closure. And why we thought that was important was because it took a long time to build trust within the community, and to change workers or to disrupt service with another service provider coming in wasn't ideal for the families that we were servicing. So that's the reason why we went with that model. There was 1 child welfare supervisor during the pilot period, that 1-year period, and now they've added a child welfare service director as well.
So I kind of want to explain what does this look like. And honestly, I probably can't. People say, what do you do? I say, what do you want me to do? Because no single community member is the same. So we really look at people and in a way that they're all unique and they all have unique needs. So one way that we were able to kind of work through things, and we talk about circles a lot, and maybe it's foreign, because if you were here, we would be able to better describe what a circle looks like. So let me tell you about a circle. So circles are like this. It could be on a screen with 1,000 different faces here, or it could be 5 people gathering together in a room to have a conversation, hard conversations. I don't want to give the impression that this has been great and easy, because some of this is very, very difficult. But always keeping in mind the vulnerability of our families and having opportunity to lift them up. So sometimes it looks like, rather than taking a child into care, how can we kind of interject and stop that from happening? So we look at kinship options. So sometimes that's family members, sometimes that's community members within our Indigenous community. Being able to be really, really creative. So, you know, I have some families that will come in and on our Monday nights during our drum circles, and they will come and visit with their children. So there's always an intention there where we're looking for opportunities for growth. So if we see this mom doing amazing things, then we want to make sure that that's recognized. If a mom's struggling, then we're there to help. We're not there to judge that mom. Sorry, and I excuse me, I'm saying mom, but I really truly do mean family as a whole. So if that individual is struggling, that's our responsibility to say, we see that you're struggling. How can we walk you through this? What do you need? And sometimes it's just to be heard. Sometimes it's, I have no groceries and I am terrified to tell Sherrie or the team, I don't have groceries for my kids when they're going to come for a visit at my home. And we understand that. So those are ways that we make things happen in a different way, always with the goal of reunification. So that goal, and we work really, really hard with these families. So if you know a friendship center, you know that we have multitude of programs. So we have programs from birth to grave. So we have our prenatal programs, our healthy babies programs. We have programs that help single women with children to attend college, university, with assistance with housing. These are all things that are preventative services. We have lifelong care programs that help people, maybe they're aging and need some support. Sometimes lifelong care could mean a child with a disability that needs some extra supports, and that family needs support. So we really wrap around that family to create that community that they need. So those individual needs. So you heard earlier, my position is Indigenous Healing and Wellness. And that means so many things, because again, I don't know, I couldn't tell you in one sentence what I do, because sometimes I literally have a mop bucket and cleaning supplies, and I am side by side with a family, and I'm helping them just to help them feel better, to get their home in order. And I know I have other people that will say, that's not your job. Oh, well, I think it is. Because it's not just about going and cleaning somebody's house. It's about creating relationships and trust. And that is so important. So there's so many other things that I could talk about, like the assistance with grocery bills, utility bills, and attending healing lodges, which that's been very difficult with the COVID pandemic. So there haven't been a lot of in-person services. I'm one of the few that have been on the ground running since the beginning of the pandemic, because there's a need to be there in person. So
I also wanted to take a minute to just talk, and Liz and I were talking yesterday as we were preparing, and you know, we posed an interesting question to each other, which was, who during the year pilot left the Unity team? And the answer was nobody. We really were able to maintain the staff and the complement during COVID, which is fairly remarkable. And what we think, you know, is really special about the Unity team was that it provided a level of well-being for the people who were involved in it. They believed in what they were doing, and that, you know, we already know that validation and believing in what you're doing, that combats the vicarious trauma that you experience as a practitioner. So we took a moment and just to unpack that the team has stayed really solid, and we do believe that that's because they believed in what they were doing. So as I said, we believed in what we were doing, but we also believed that we had a journey to go on, and that journey was going to last much longer than the pilot for this team, and it would happen not even over the course of the next couple of years, but lifelong. And we knew we needed to begin to process the process of decolonizing, and kind of really figuring out a way of lifting up approaches that were working in the Indigenous community and the approaches that weren't working within child welfare. We knew this was a colossal undertaking, and we also knew that many people argue that it's not possible in child welfare. But we were committed to working in a good way, given the context in Niagara. Our mandate continues to be colonial. We understand that systemic change is needed on a larger scale, but we recognized that progress can be slow, and children, youth, and families needed to be serviced differently now, today. We sought to mitigate harms of how they were serviced in the best way we could through prevention and shifting the focus to healing and well-being.
So to talk a little bit more about the impacts of COVID, again, we had very limited services. So we did rely on a lot of online platforms, which have been absolutely amazing, actually. Initially, it was uncomfortable, and I think we all felt that way, coming on screen and people seeing us, with our hair all up, and, but we figured it out, right? We really figured out how to do this. And with that as well, we were able to do home visits virtually, which sounds absurd, right? But we did it. Where mom or dad, my apologies, were able to go through their home with their camera, which is, it's intrusive. I'm going to say that. I felt like that was kind of intrusive, but it was also an alternative to being, affected by COVID or bringing something into somebody's home by going to multiple homes in a day. So we didn't want to have to do that. So where possible, we did everything virtually. But we also saw a flood of elder services that were being provided online. And the amount of knowledge that we were able to just take in all of these teachings that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. And it's been amazing for our families especially to say, hey, this grandmother is providing this teaching, or Toronto Council Fire, they're doing this, they're having a men's group and it's all online. And being in Niagara, you can attend to these services, which were helping with that goal of lifting families up. Culture is so important for our families, especially those families who have been disconnected from that culture. To have that is so empowering. But one thing that I learned about, I would say about 5 years ago, that was introduced to me was a Mi'kmaq teaching around two-eyed seeing. So it's being able to see the world through an Indigenous lens as well as a Western lens. So that's something that we really try to be mindful of in doing. I know we're getting a little bit short on time, so if you have a chance, Google two-eyed seeing. Absolutely amazing. I'd love you to have a look.
So just wanting to take a moment to take a look at this beautiful piece of art. And this artwork was created by Carol Rose, who is an Indigenous digital artist. And she gave permission, I spoke with her, and she gave us permission to share her art. And what I was most interested in, when we worked with Carol and asked her for her interpretation on unity, I was so interested in understanding what her perspective was. And so when I did connect with her, she told me that what she wanted us to kind of focus on was that what first came to her mind when she thought about unity was balance. And that's clearly identified in her digital art, that there's like a day and a night, and there's a moon and a sun, and that there's a balance of different people coming together in order to create unity. She also wanted to, kind of highlight that it's all based in nature, and that's why you see the tree within her artwork. And she told me that there was a reason she put the two women that are in, or the two girls that are in her artwork holding hands, even though they're different. They represent day and night. And that was her understanding that we needed to come together, and instead of being polarized or instead of being torn apart. And so just wanting to obviously thank Carol for her artwork, but I think it provides us all a really good teaching if we look closely at it. So I'm just going to quickly share with you some of the stats from the Unity team, and this is based on our first year. And the slide's entitled Love, because I think it took a lot of love for us to get here. So 128 Indigenous families were serviced by the Unity team in that year. We had 40 fewer Indigenous children in care in Niagara since January 2020. We engaged in 78 alternative to court interventions, such as talking circles and Indigenous alternative dispute resolution, which ended up being about 2,400 hours of work within those circles. And that's an average, and I think that's probably lower than what we actually, the time we actually devoted. We had 56 children receiving service that we believe we prevented from coming into care. They were in really, high risk situations, and we were able to come together in circle and figure out ways of ensuring that they didn't enter the foster care system. 17 of whom remained in their community through either kinship or customary care. We had 0 readmissions of children during that year serviced on the Unity team, and 100% of the families that we serviced had an Indigenous advocate or band representative or somebody else walking the path with us.
So what our team members had to say. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't fill out the survey because I was too busy. So none of these are mine. So the Unity team. This has made a big difference with clients' trust and feeling more comfortable and at ease. There are fair, realistic, and safe plans being created in a collaborative and a creative way. Input from families is being considered and respected. Families often request to be serviced by the Unity team, and they do, and expect service that respects their right to self-determination with a focus on collaboration and prevention. I have never been happier in my role as a child welfare worker than I have been on the Unity team. I value the wisdom and input from the Indigenous community, and I honor the community's perspective to healing and wellness. And this is all very true. We have an amazing team.
So we're just about to wrap up here, and just wanting to thank everybody for taking the time, and we're sorry we're running a little bit late. But just wanting to kind of leave you with some takeaway messages that we had from our year together, and we continue as a team now. But from that, when Liz and I, again, taking time to reflect, and we took a lot of time to reflect and unpack, what we truly believe is that we need to listen to people's stories. We need to believe them, and we need to focus on helping people on their healing journey. We need to extend our arms out and bring people in. We need to get into circle. We need to build genuine relationships so that we can build trust. We need to keep pushing forward. We need to lift up Indigenous voices, and we need to create opportunities for people to go on their own journey, as well as families to go on their journey, so they can heal, disrupt, and decolonize. We are only starting down this path, and we need further support in continuing this. We're hoping our story of this journey encourages others to continue on their path to disrupt racism and decolonize their practice.
And like Sherrie said, this is a journey. We're still on this journey. We are still learning. We're making mistakes as we go along. But I really do want to say that I encourage you all in your practice to get into circle with your Indigenous community members. And if you don't understand by now what getting into circle means. It just means being in an equal space. There are circles. This is a circle today. We are in circle right now. But being in circle with your community members allows them the opportunity to feel heard. If you need any further support with getting into circle, please reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, probably all over social media. But just have a look, send me a message. I will get to you as soon as Sherrie lets me, because she has me very, very busy. I'm just kidding. But I really, truly appreciate being here today. And I want to say a big miigwech to everyone, and especially to all of you that are here in the room here with us today as well, for your support, the tech support. Honestly, not a techie person, and I'm not a camera person. So I feel really semi-comfortable here today, and I truly, again, appreciate you having us. Thank you.
I'd just like to say to you, Sherrie, and to Liz, I feel very privileged to have been in a circle with you two today. This has been a remarkable experience. Thank you, miigwech, not only for being here today and sharing your story with us, but for what you do every day. Thank you. I just want to say I've been reflecting on some of the words that I heard today, and I think they are meaningful, and I invite other people to reflect on those words, like uncomfortable conversations, no shortcuts, unity, unify, reunify. I think those are messages for hopefully everyone who's listening today. I promised you this was worth waiting for and worth listening to, and I'm very much appreciative of the experience that we've had. Members are now invited to participate in a question period by entering their questions into the chat box. I think there are some already there. Our time is a little bit limited, but we are indeed going to have a few question and answer sessions here. And I'd like to ask Sarah Chowdhury, the college's Director of Communications, to read some of those questions. Sarah?
Thank you very much, John. I'll maybe ask Sherrie and Liz to come back to the podium for some of the questions. I thought I would take a moment just to share a few of the comments that have been coming through. The chat box has been really engaged throughout the presentation, sharing, earlier on some reflections and commitment, as you had noted during your presentation, which I'll share after the presentation that you can see. Overall comments noting how inspired they are for the amazing work as the Unity team, and a beautiful presentation, especially the mopping together story, speaking volumes on being present with the individual and the families, noting how informative it is and that they can feel your compassion throughout the presentation. There's been a few questions, one of them wondering how they can learn more about Indigenous communities in their area. Somebody, for example, who lives in the St. Catharines and wanting to know how to reach out to the Indigenous communities.
I'm happy to be helpful in finding the resources in your area. I do know a lot of the different Friendship Center communities, but especially St. Catharines. So feel free to give me a call at Niagara Regional Native Center. I'm happy to help or to assist in any way that you are seeking.
Thanks, Liz. I have a question about, somebody has a question about the pilot itself, wondering how it was originally initiated and funded.
So I think how it was initiated was really, this has been a journey that started long before the Unity team was created. So there were partnerships with our local Indigenous agencies prior to that. And this was really a coming together. And then what we did was we proposed this, this initiative to the ministry, and we were granted that for our first year. And now we're continuing to advocate for ongoing funding. But in the meantime, we continue to operate as the Unity team.
That's great. Thank you, Sherrie. There's additional questions about being able to share the slides at the end of the presentation. And I think what I can maybe just note is that this presentation will be available on demand, so you'll be able to view with the recording some of the slides as well. I'm going to take one final question. Wanting to know how successful the program has been in engaging male members within the community, and wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I find typically that it's the moms that we are servicing. However, we do offer programs and services for men, myself included. So when we have a family that is interacting with, say it's domestic violence, or where their families are kind of torn apart or have a no contact order, we reach out to dad as well and offer to bring him into service as well, because it's about an entire family unit. And when we speak of that circle, we speak about birth to death, and that includes your entire family, whether that's your parents, grandparents, cousins, sisters, your next door neighbor, whoever that person is that you consider family. So we always make attempts to bring dad as well into the circles when there are challenges to do so. But always, our men are very important in our community. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much, Liz. I think that's all the time we have today for question period. But thank you again so much for everything, and I'll leave it to our council chair for the closing now. Thank you.
You can just pause for a moment, folks. I just want to present you with a very small token of appreciation for what you've done for us today. Thank you so much, Miigwech. I have to say, someone in the question chat room made a comment about the floor mopping. You had me at walking beside that little 5-year-old boy. Powerful message. Miigwech. I'd now like to invite Nathan up once again to provide some closing thoughts for the day. Nathan?
Miigwech again, everyone, for attending today's event, for all the speakers today. So typically in our circles, we open up with our tobacco. The tobacco comes from the east, where the sun rises. We offer it for the food that we are provided, the air we breathe, and give thanks for the life. I brought today with me our 4 sacred medicines. I have here the sweetgrass, which usually sits in the west. A little bit of sage here, which sits in the south, and the cedar, which sits in the north. So when we do, what we do with our medicines, we do in the morning or whenever before ceremonies, we put these medicines in our little mica shell here, and we do a little smudge. So when we smudge, it's like when you get up in the morning, when you go to the bathroom. It's like washing your hands. So we wash our hands over our smudge here. We wash our mouth for the air we breathe, our eyes to see, and then our hair. We clean our hair with it, and then all the way down to our feet for where we step in our path for the day, to give good words and good thoughts for the day. We as Indigenous people believe that we live a continuous circle of life, starting from the east, where our child is our birth, to the south, adolescence, all the way to the west, our adulthood, and then lastly, the north, our elders. And we believe that this is a continuous circle. We come back in some kind of form again and start the circle again. Just like Mother Earth, the earth itself, it's round and round and continuous. It's a continuous circle. Again, I just want to say Miigwech again for being here today. The Anishinaabe people don't have a word for goodbye. We say Bamapi, which means see you later. As in, because goodbye is like forever for us, like never again. So we always have this thought we're always going to see each other in some way or some form again. So with that, I want to say Bamapi and miigwech for having us here today. Miigwech.
Thank you again, Nathan, for your wisdom and your guidance. I think we all have so much to learn from Indigenous culture, and I hope we're all open to that learning and, as others have said, unlearning, which is so important. To all our attendees, thank you for participating today. I hope this year's educational forum was a valuable experience for you. As a reminder, following today's event, you'll receive an email with a link to a post-event feedback survey. Once you complete that survey, you will have access to a link to the certificate of participation, which you can fill out and print for your records. We know that's important. Your feedback is also very important so that the college can do its very best in planning future events. Thank you again for your participation. That's the end of today's event. Thank you.